the whispering shadows. In the small town of Ravenswood, a series of mysterious disappearances had plagued the community for decades. Every year, on the night of the winter solstice, someone would vanish without a trace. The townsfolk had come to call it the Night of Shadows. Sarah, a journalist from New York, was intrigued by the legend. Determined to uncover the truth, she traveled to Ravenswood. She rented a room in the town's only inn, a creaky old building with an unsettling atmosphere. The innkeeper, an elderly woman named Mrs. Blackwood, warned her about the night of the solstice. "Don't go out after dark," Mrs. Blackwood whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "The shadows, they whisper, and they take those who listen." Dismissing the warnings as superstitious nonsense, Sarah began her investigation. She interviewed the locals, who were reluctant to talk. Eventually, she met an old man named Thomas, who claimed to have seen the shadows firsthand. "They come from the forest," he said, his voice trembling. "They're not human. They move like smoke, whispering in a language no one understands. If you hear them, it's already too late." As the solstice approached, Sarah decided to stay out late, determined to catch a glimpse of these so-called shadows. She ventured into the forest with her camera and a flashlight, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Hours passed, and the forest remained silent. Just as she was about to give up, she heard it, a faint whisper, like the rustling of leaves. She turned around, shining her flashlight into the darkness. There, emerging from the trees, were the shadows. They moved fluidly, their forms shifting and undulating. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the whispers grew louder. She felt a cold chill run down her spine, and despite her fear, she raised her camera to capture the scene. But as she pressed the shutter, the shadows surged towards her, enveloping her in darkness. The next morning, Sarah's camera was found on the forest floor, but she was gone. The last photo she had taken showed nothing but a black void. The townsfolk mourned her loss, another victim of the Night of Shadows. Years later, Ravenswood remains haunted by the legend. Every winter solstice, the whispers return, and another soul is claimed by the shadows. The haunting of Blackwood Manor. Blackwood Manor had stood on the outskirts of town for centuries, its grand halls and sprawling gardens now shrouded in decay and mystery. The locals spoke of the manor in hushed tones, warning of the restless spirits that lingered within its walls. When the manor was put up for sale, it was bought by a young couple, Emily and David. They were thrilled by the prospect of restoring the old mansion to its former glory, unaware of the dark history that lay hidden within. From the moment they moved in, strange occurrences began to unfold. At first, it was subtle footsteps echoing through empty halls, doors creaking open on their own, and cold drafts sweeping through rooms with no apparent source. But soon, the hauntings became more aggressive. One night, Emily awoke to the sound of a woman sobbing. She followed the sound to the grand staircase, where she saw the apparition of a woman in a tattered gown. Her eyes were hollow, and her expression was one of utter despair. Emily tried to speak, but the ghost vanished, leaving behind a chilling silence. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily and David delved into the manor's history. They discovered that the house had once belonged to the Blackwood family, who had perished under mysterious circumstances. Legend had it that Lady Blackwood, driven mad by grief, had taken her own life and cursed the house. As they dug deeper, the hauntings intensified. David was tormented by visions of shadowy figures and disembodied voices. Emily found herself drawn to the attic, where she discovered Lady Blackwood's diary. The pages were filled with desperate pleas and dark rituals, revealing her descent into madness. One stormy night, the couple decided to perform a cleansing ritual they had found in the diary, hoping to free the spirits trapped within the manor. They gathered in the grand hall, chanting the incantations. As they did, the house seemed to come alive, the walls groaning and the temperature plummeting. Suddenly, the spirit of Lady Blackwood appeared before them, her face twisted in rage. She screamed, and the room was filled with a blinding light. When it subsided, Emily and David were gone, vanished without a trace. To this day, Blackwood Manor stands abandoned, a silent monument to the horrors that took place within its walls. The locals say that on stormy nights, the screams of the cursed souls can still be heard echoing through the halls. The curse of Willow Lake. Willow Lake was a place of beauty and tranquility, surrounded by dense forests and blooming wildflowers. But beneath its serene surface lay a dark secret, one that had claimed countless lives over the years. The locals believed the lake was cursed, haunted by the spirit of a woman who had drowned there long ago. Lena, an adventurous spirit with a passion for the paranormal, decided to investigate the legend. She traveled to Willow Lake with her best friend, Mark, determined to uncover the truth. They set up camp by the water's edge, eager to spend the night exploring. As the sun set, the lake took on an eerie stillness. Lena and Mark paddled out to the center in a small rowboat, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The water was unnaturally calm, and a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping them in an almost suffocating silence. Hours passed with no sign of the ghostly woman. Just as they were about to give up, Lena noticed something in the water. A faint glow, like a lantern, was moving beneath the surface. Intrigued, she leaned over the edge of the boat, trying to get a better look. Suddenly, a cold hand grabbed her wrist, pulling her into the water. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the fog. Mark reached out to save her, but it was too late. Lena was dragged beneath the surface, disappearing into the depths. Panicked, Mark rowed back to shore and called for help. The authorities searched the lake, but Lena was never found. Heartbroken and guilt-ridden, Mark became obsessed with the curse, spending every waking moment trying to find a way to bring her back. One night, as he sat by the lake, he saw the same glowing light Lena had seen. Desperate, he waded into the water, calling out to the spirit. The water began to churn, and the ghostly figure of a woman emerged, her eyes filled with sorrow. "You seek what is lost," she whispered. "But some things are meant to stay hidden." Mark pleaded with her, but she only shook her head. With a final, mournful look, she disappeared into the fog. Mark's body was found the next morning, floating lifelessly in the lake. To this day, the curse of Willow Lake remains a mystery. The locals warn visitors to stay away, especially at night, for the spirit of the drowned woman still haunts the waters, seeking to claim more souls. The Devil's Grimoire. In a small, forgotten town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, an old library held a secret that had been buried for centuries. Among its dusty shelves and cobweb-covered books was a grimoire, said to contain dark spells and forbidden knowledge. The townsfolk called it the Devil's Grimoire, and for good reason. Anyone who read from it was never the same again. Alex, a curious historian, stumbled upon the legend while researching local folklore. Intrigued by the tales of dark magic and cursed tomes, he made his way to the town, determined to find the grimoire. The librarian, an elderly man with a weathered face, warned him of the dangers. "Some books are best left unread," he said, his voice heavy with caution. "The grimoire is not meant for human eyes. It corrupts the soul and brings ruin to all who seek its power." Undeterred, Alex persuaded the librarian to show him the book. Hidden in a locked cabinet, the grimoire was bound in black leather, its pages yellowed with age. As Alex opened it, a chill ran down his spine. The words seemed to writhe on the page, and a sense of dread filled the air. Ignoring his unease, Alex began to read. The spells were written in an ancient language, but as he studied them, they started to make sense. He felt a strange power coursing through him, a dark energy that both terrified and exhilarated him. That night, Alex returned to his hotel room with the grimoire. He couldn't resist the urge to try one of the spells, a simple incantation that promised to reveal hidden knowledge. As he chanted the words, the room grew cold, and shadows danced on the walls. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him, a demon with fiery eyes and a malevolent grin. "You have summoned me," it hissed, its voice like the crackling of flames. "And now you are mine." Alex tried to close the book, but his hands were frozen in place. The demon's presence filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. You sought forbidden knowledge, it continued, stepping closer. And now you must pay the price. Desperate, Alex tried to break free from the demon's gaze, but it was no use. He could feel his soul being pulled from his body, the dark energy of the grimoire consuming him. With one final scream, he was enveloped in darkness. When the townsfolk found Alex's lifeless body the next morning, the grimoire was nowhere to be seen. The librarian, sensing what had happened, locked the library's doors and never spoke of the book again. He knew that the grimoire would resurface one day, seeking a new victim. Years passed, and the legend of the Devil's Grimoire faded into obscurity. But those who know the truth warn others. Some books are best left unread, for the darkness within them can never be fully contained.